Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We are jumping into what is essentially the last marking period of the trimester. As we begin chapter 9, we're going to talk about parabolas. Parabolas are the reason why we had to factor. And we're not going to factor right away. We're still on a break from that. But this is a special shape that's part of a family of special shapes in math that we spend a lot of time with. And so we're going to start spending a lot of time with them with what I'm going to predict is going to be a beefy video. But remember, I still love you. I hope you still enjoy it as much as you ever enjoy these. I thank you for watching. Let's do it. Maybe. There we go. After watching this, we're going to identify and graph a quadratic. We're going to give you the domain and range and identify some other key features of a parabola. Stuff that we've done before with different shapes, but now we're going to dig into what's arguably the most important one. This is a parabola, right? This kind of U-shaped deal right here. This is a parabola, and it comes from graphing these functions. And you'll notice they're the same function. I've got one in kind of our standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. That's our quadratic trinomials that we were factoring. If we graph one, this is what it looks like. This is in function notation. You're going to see this a lot. I'm going to use function notation throughout the rest of this video. The homework uses standard form, but it's good practice, all right? Definition is basically the U-shaped graph of a quadratic trinomial, right? Okay, you graph this, you type this into a calculator, this shape's going to come up. Now, for the video version of this, we're going to be using Desmos because odds are if you're watching the video, you're home, right? That's kind of why we're doing all this, unless this is in the future and I'm just absent or something. I don't know. But right now you're at home because we're all at home, sort of. Anyway, you're going to be using Desmos. If you happen to be watching this video again, but you were in class and you're just kind of reviewing, you can still use the TI-84 like we talked about in class, but then also we'll have talked about Desmos as well. So this video is going to focus on Desmos, but some of you will have had access to the TI-84s and we'll have talked about how to do it that way as well. So just fair warning, all right? This is a parabola. We're going to talk about how to graph it. Here's the steps we're going to follow to do it in Desmos. Number one, type in the equation, right? Simple as that. This equation is f of x equals x squared plus 6x plus 5. Those of you who are super sharp at your factoring are already thinking, oh, are there some factors of 1 times 5 that add up to 6? Anyway, you're going to type it right in. F of x equals x squared plus 6x plus 5. Honestly, you don't even need the f of x. You can use y or just type it in. It'll still graph it. But again, math teacher, I can't help myself. It's in function notation form. Once it's typed in, you're going to, I gotta move my face out of the way here real quick. You're gonna click on this little gear here at the top right-hand corner, okay? And then once you do that, you'll see this little table button pop up and you wanna click on that next, okay? And then what that does is it turns your function into a table, right? And so now it gives you the points for -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, and then the y coordinates that go along with that. Okay, and so it lets you find some points. You can even see them on the graph. It puts little points there for you. This example doesn't show the best points, but you still will be able to see them once you type them in. And then once you've got that done, you can transfer those points over onto your paper. And if you're using line paper because you don't have the worksheets printed out, you can still kind of sketch these out a lot more accurately with what Desmos gives you. But if you're working right from the worksheet, you get the points right there just from that, okay? So as always, Desmos makes this real easy. It's not much harder on the calculators either, but this is what you've got, okay? Once you've got the graph done, we have to find our first key point and the most key point on a parabola, which is called the vertex. As you can see, I've got it labeled down here at the bottom of the parabola. Definition of a vertex is the highest or lowest point on the parabola. I'm not sure how you're taking notes, but whatever you're using to take notes, stop the video and make sure you write that down. Understanding what a vertex is critical to our discussion of what a parabola is and all the parts that go to it. So make sure you understand that that lowest point or also a highest point on a parabola, that's the vertex. The vertex also is always labeled by the coordinates h and k. So since this is a point on the graph, it has an x coordinate and a y coordinate. In this case, it's -3, 4, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's -3, -4, which means that h is -3 and k is -4. Okay, it's really important that you understand what that means, where that's coming from. Okay, we're going to be talking about h and k a lot. So the first thing we're going to do on almost every one of these problems after we have them graphed is we're going to find that vertex. Okay, and the nice thing about using Desmos is you just click on it, right? You put your mouse or you use your finger, or you tap it, you click it, whatever. It'll snap right to it, and it'll say, "Here's the vertex," and you have to just usually jot down what h and k are, and you can go from there. Okay, finding the vertex. Next is domain and range, which should sound familiar. All right, domain is the set of all possible x values in a function. Range is all the possible y values in a function. Same as it's been since we were doing linear equations back in September, October-ish, right? We talked about it then. We talked about it with exponentials. We talked about it with radicals. We skipped radicals. But every time we've talked about a function, we've always talked about domain and range. And what's nice is that domain, as it has been for all the functions that we've covered, it's always all real numbers. Because if we think about all the possible x values, we're really asking ourselves is how far left and how far right does this graph go with no interruptions? And there aren't any. There just won't be. It'll never stop. So it goes all the way left to negative infinity, all the way right to positive infinity. The domain is always going to be all real numbers. Where it gets tricky is the range, kind of like when we were doing exponential functions at the end of second try, is if we remember we had to find that vertex, h and k, the range is going to be y is greater than k, because you can see this u, it comes down, and it stops, and then it goes back up again. So it can go up forever this way, it can go up forever that way, it can go as high as we ever want it, but the lowest it's going to get is k, and so that's why y is greater than or equal to k. Now the only time it's not y is greater than or equal to k is when it's y is less than or equal to k, because, that's right, it's opening down, right? When the U is upside down, forms more of a rainbow. Thanks my daughter for that inspiration. I don't know why. I've never thought to say that, but my daughter said something earlier. I was like, oh yeah, it's right. Anyway, when it's rainbow shaped, right now we have a maximum, right? Which we'll talk about later. So the highest it can get is K, which means Y is always going to be less than or equal to that K. But notice, domain is still all real numbers, right? If we're giving you a test, we're giving you a quiz, and one of the questions is asking for the domain, you better get that one right, because it's always all real numbers, okay? I want you to take a break because this is a lot. You can do number 1, 2, and 3 right now. So understand the instructions there. You just need to graph the function using the table. Right, we've talked about that in the video so far. State the domain and range. State the domain. It's always the same thing for easy points. And then, of course, you have to state the range. And that's probably going to be the trickiest part of this, okay? Pause the video. Do what you have to do there. Cool. Welcome back. Now we're going to talk about our next key point, which is called the axis of symmetry, okay? I don't have any transitions here, so bear with me. We're going to kind of talk through this. Axis of symmetry is a vertical line passing through the vertex of a parabola. We usually use a dotted line because it's kind of like an invisible line. We wouldn't normally graph it unless we're directly talking about it. But the idea of symmetry, right, is whatever it is on one side, it's the exact same thing on the other side. I usually tell kids put their pinkies together, fold their hands together, and they're the same, right? Because our bodies are more or less symmetrical. Obviously, nobody's perfect. Oh, I got my weird eyebrow, kind of goes the wrong way. Whatever. We're not talking about that. Generally, that's symmetry, right? Right side is the same as the left side. And with a parabola, it's mathematically symmetrical. So it is exactly the same on the left side as it is on the right side. And what's nice about this line is it does have an equation. It's just x equals whatever h is. So remember, vertex was h comma k. The axis of symmetry is just x equals whatever that h is, right? If it's y equals, that's a horizontal line. X equals is a vertical line, and it's x equals h. It's a vertical line going through that parabola. Going through the vertex of that parabola. And that's our definition. So that's what we're looking for. So you'll be asked to graph that, and I've got some stuff in Desmos to help you guys out with that, to make that extra easy for you. The other thing that we have to find is the y-intercept. Sorry, I forgot to turn the ringer off. The other thing we have is the y-intercept, And just as it's always been, definition of y-intercept never changes. It's the point on the graph where it crosses the y-axis, which as you can see is right here. And this always occurs when x equals 0. Now, old school, we used to have to take the equation, right? Y equals x squared plus 6x plus 5. We had to plug 0 in for x and then solve to see what it was. We're using Desmos. Just use what we got for us. It's going to be right there. Same way we can just click on the vertex and find it. Desmos also knows we want to find the y-intercept because it's an important part of our graph. So we can click on that and it'll just pop it right there up for us. It gives us an ordered pair, so I expect your answers to be an ordered pair as well. Okay, so take advantage of that. And then, yeah, you just type it in. Understand that's all the calculator is doing. All the calculator does is just plug 0 in for x. If you do enough of them, you'll start to realize, oh, it's always C. Yeah, it's always C. So that's another way to think about it. You don't even have to touch Desmos. If you know the equation, look at C. That's your y-intercept. With that, you now know what you need to know to do. You now have the tools you need to do numbers 4, 5, and 6. So again, pause the video because this one's beefy. Do the next 3 problems. You're going to want to first, again, find the vertex, axis of symmetry. Make sure you are writing out the full x equals, right? Don't just write down what h is. I need to see x equals h. Oh, but Miss Young, aren't you just being... Yeah, a little bit. But also remember, your test for this is likely going to be multiple choice. You need to understand, not just from the practical sense of the quiz, but also because that's what we are actually finding, is an equation. And on the quiz, the answer is an equation. It's not an equation if you just write down a number. So make sure you've got that whole thing. The y-intercept, again, should be a full coordinate. X is going to be 0, and then b would be whatever number is actually the y-intercept, so whatever point on the y-axis that you're crossing, that's going to be what b is. I'm using b for the y-intercept because that's what we do, right? Slope-intercept form, you guys remember that from linear equations? Y equals mx plus b was y-intercept. Yeah. Oops. And finally, for these 3, you do not need to copy the graph for these answers, right? There's a little bit of space there. You don't need to graph these, all right? Don't worry about trying to copy and paste and do all that. Just explain these 3 key points for each graph, okay? Pause the video, do the next 3 problems. All right, last bit here. This is going faster than I thought, but still, anyway. Maximum and minimum value. All right, definition here is it's just the lowest or highest point on the graph. And you may be thinking, isn't that the definition of a vertex? And it is, right? Maximum and minimum is just a different word, more specific word for the vertex, okay? So if we look at an example, I'm going to cover up the word value there. So if you need to rewind, if we have a vertex like this, right? A vertex, we call this opens up. Well, here we have a minimum. We have a lowest value for y, right? We would say this one has a minimum. And the minimum value is just k, right? Y equals k. And it's always going to be y equals k, right? So the problem is going to say, it's going to have you graph it. I've already got a graph for you here. And it's going to say, is it a minimum or is it a maximum? You're going to say, well, it's got a minimum because it goes down and then comes back up. And you say y equals k. Now, if it looks like this, right now it's upside down. It's got that rainbow shape instead of the U shape. Now it's got a maximum. It has a highest point. Has a highest value for y. And so the maximum value is still y equals k, but now you would just say this has a maximum, not a minimum. All right? And that's it, right? That's the last thing that we're going to throw into this homework. All right? That's the last part of this is called parabola that we need to understand for this lesson. Graph it, find the vertex. Always got to find the vertex. Circle if it's a max or minimum. If you're looking on the worksheet, you'll see it just says max, min, circle 1. Just literally just circle it. And then tell me what that minimum value is. And I even wrote the y equals k in there for you this time. And when I say I mean Mr. Arity because he made the worksheets, but you get the idea, okay? It's already there for you, all right? You just got to write in what k is, all right? So again, if you take one thing out of this entire video, take the part that says understand what the vertex is. From the vertex, oh man, gosh, I didn't go to bed. The vertex is the key, all right? Vertex is the key to everything. And if you can find that, you're in really good shape. All right, now, as always, reach out to me if you have any questions. I love you guys. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.